gained experience in handling the machine. I found that I could stop for a day, an hour, or even for a second to observe.
And you've used my machine to escape the ends of
I
justice.
must congratulate you on that device. I confess that at dinner the other century, I thought you'd lost your wits. But fate intervened and forced me to ascertain for myself that you are truly the Columbus of a new age.
I've covered!
Trial by stone.
Trial by stone! Holy cat. Hey. It's almost...
Yeah. Almost a perfect...
It is. It's round.
We finally got one.
We found a flying saucer.
He ain't tying me up.
Then I'll have to kill you, child.
Then kill me.
I mean it.
I guess you do.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mark Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display. Check.
5.
Lasers. Check.
4.
Particle beam. Check.
3.
Photon bolts. Check.
2.
Chair control. Check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley, this is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start. Hello and welcome to the Docking Bay 77 podcast, where we are smart like mystics, but eat like Skeksis. I am your host, Dayton Johnson, and we are continuing our look at science fiction films across the decades. We've already hit the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and now it's time for the 1980s. Joining me on this trip to the planet Thra, we have, he's the wisest of the Suncoast Mystics. It is Scott Hoffman. How's it going, Scott?
The prophecy didn't say anything about this.
Prophets don't know everything.
Oh, well done. Well done, Liam.
Good follow-up.
And he throws a fizz-sized tantrum every time he gets left behind. It is Liam Lewis. How's it going, Liam?
Nice.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. Before we get into our film, I do have to mention our Spotify Wrapped contest we had. It was guess Dayton's top 5 artists according to Spotify Wrapped 2024. And the correct answers in order from 5 to 1, it was Led Zeppelin, Rush, Anthrax, Iron Maiden, and Eagles. I want to thank everybody that guessed, including Deaf Dave, Josh Avery, Jason Coslett, the Voice of Reason, Amber Lewis, Jeff Johnson, John Wright, Eric Dirth, and Brad Moore. Everybody that did guess got at least 1 correct, but it was John, Amber, and Brad Moore that all got 3 answers correct. Now, since Brad is the only non-pod regular, he gets to guest on an upcoming episode, and as of right now, he's picking a Rush album, and he hasn't decided yet, but he will be letting me know soon, and we will get that on the books and into your ear holes sooner than later. Once again, thanks for everybody for guessing, and we'll look forward to doing it next December. All right, it's time to discuss our film from the 1980s. It is the Jim Henson directed film, The Dark Crystal.
In a place outside time lies a mystical realm of sound and vision. A wondrous civilization. Where good and evil struggle to possess the Dark Crystal.
right, it's time for some opening thoughts. When and where did you see it? What'd you think then? And has it changed since then? Scott, why don't you go first?
I'm pretty sure I saw this in the theater. I'm pretty sure it made my dad furious because I'm pretty sure I spent at least part of this movie with my hands over my eyes. It's this cycle of fascination and fright. When it first came out, captivated by the puppetry and everything else, but terrified by the visuals, especially the Skeksis. And to this day, I still get a rush of like chills whenever I start to watch it. But one of my favorite movies.
Very good. All right, Liam.
Somewhat similar to Scott. This is one of many such movies in my life. Ghostbusters, Fantasia, Neverending Story. There is a string of films where when I was first presented them in my youth, I was horrified. I could not get through Night on Bald Mountain, and now it's my favorite piece of the entire film.
Mine too.
I distinctly remember I was doing okay in this movie until the Gartham came out, and then we were watching it at my grandmother's house, and I went and hid in the bathroom. But it's one of those movies where, like, the initial viewing, I was terrified, and then a couple of years later, I was coaxed into watching it again, and I was obsessed. I fell down a rabbit hole I have as yet to emerge from. I have, for my reference material for this episode, I have the novelization and all 3 volumes of the Dark Crystal Creation Myths graphic novel series.
Nice.
I've watched all of Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, and I hope to acquire more Dark Crystal objects as I go forth in my journey.
Well, apparently there is a 4K Blu-ray special edition coming soon that actually has a crystal shard in the packaging. So I think I'll be upgrading my current version because I have owned the VHS. I currently own the collector's edition. I saw this in the theater when I was 11. Now, unlike Scott, I didn't spend the whole movie covering my face. I was probably, if I did, I was probably teased by my friend that was there with me. It probably would have been Chris. It might have been Timber, but either way, they would have made fun of me. So I kept my eyes open as much as I possibly could. I was always a fan, of course, of the Muppets and Jim Henson. So when I heard this was coming out, it was a no-brainer. I was going to see it in the theater. The Skeksis scared me. Agra made me laugh. The world blew my mind, and I fell in love with this universe. And the Jim Henson and his imagination is all over this film. A world is a better place for him being here and also for this film being here. I love this film. It was actually my choice when we were deciding what films to do for this series. I kind of, did, podcast ruler choice. I picked this film for us to discuss. Some people might call it, more fantasy, but I don't care. It's science fiction as far as I'm concerned. There's no spaceships, there's no whatever, but I don't care. My call.
There's astronomy and interdimensional beings.
Right. That's right.
It's science fantasy. It's like Dune. Like,
yeah.
We're still having ritualistic knife fights, but also like spaceships.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, see, that works. It works.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. That works. So
plus, if you read the Creation Myths graphic novel series that I have, you get a lot more about the Ursex, and it does get very science fiction-y.
Yeah, the Ursex are aliens, right?
Yeah, they're straight up aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Very cool. I'll have to borrow those from you.
Oh, yeah, 100%. They're amazing.
All right, cool. Let's move on.
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
It's time for That's the Fact, Jack. These are some film facts and trivia we have for the film. So, Scott, you have some production facts for us.
Yeah, so although this movie was driven by Jim Henson, it really is a shared vision made possible by Jim, Frank Oz, and Brian Fraudeman, among so many other artists and puppeteers. It began with Jim's vision way back in 1977, where he wanted to make a fantasy world like we've never seen on screen. Once he discovered The Land of Froud, a collection of drawings by Brian Froud, he reached out immediately. They worked together on the story and brought in David Odell to write the screenplay. In '79, Henson moved pre-production planning to London, where he was making the 4th season of The Muppet Show. The Dark Crystal was filmed at the EMI Elstree Studios near London. While the puppeteers for the main characters were the Muppeteers, the mystics and other creatures were performed by a specially recruited group of actors, mimes, acrobats, dancers, and clowns. The puppets were controlled through classic and brand new techniques, which included various radio, mechanical, electrical, and hydraulic systems, which is fascinating for 1982.
Right.
Just remind yourself, every time you're watching this, it's 1982. When it came out, it was billed as the first live-action film made without any human beings on screen, which I think is a little debatable because there's some people running around in full-scale costumes, but that's all right. Initial screenings were not well received since most of the audience couldn't understand what was going on. Those screenings had Skeksis speaking a language based on ancient Greek and Egyptian, specially created for them by linguist Alan Gardner. Jim hoped that people would infer the meaning from their dialogue through their actions, but it didn't quite work. So they had to re-record new lines for those characters in English to match the mouth movements already captured on film. Basically, they had to dub their own movie.
Right.
Production cost was around $15 million, but it made eventually $40.5 million during its 63-day theatrical run, making it a modest financial success and Henson's second highest grossing film of all time. It was a critical success, winning a Saturn Award, grand prize at the Fantastic Film Festival, Hugo Awards, BAFTA Awards. Its limited appeal at the time, though, was partly due to parental concerns around its dark nature. And at the time, it was running neck and neck with E.T., released the same year. So some parents probably just scooted right to the other theater so they can be terrified by E.T.
Right.
In France and Japan, it was the highest grossing box office release for that year, the second highest grossing puppet film of all time, just behind the Muppet movie, and the second highest grossing Henson film. Remains a fan favorite. It's currently enjoying a cult following because a lot of the people who grew up with it remember being terrified but are still kind of enthralled to be drawn back in, which is why Henson's children continue to explore this world, including the successful Netflix prequel series Dark Crystal: Age of the Resistance, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, I have to admit I have not watched that, so I will.
It is so choice.
Is it so
Yes.
It is so choice.
There's a puppet show within a puppet show, where they actually have a Skeksis and a mystic that work together to explain to Gelflings how all this happened, and they use the puppets use puppetry to tell this story, kind of like the what do they call that in Harry Potter when they go
Oh,
through
the Tale of the Three Brothers with the
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Picture that, but with puppetry. It's beautiful.
Nice.
I totally forgot about that sequence. It's so good.
I watched it like 5 times in watching for this movie.
So, with the Netflix series mentioning that conceptual artist Brian Froud, who you mentioned, and puppet designer Wendy Meidner met on the set of this particular movie and were married. Their son, Toby, would work on the prequel series that is now streaming on Netflix as a 37-year-old designer. So that's kind of interesting that, they met and they spawned a kid and he worked on a prequel for this film. I think it's hilarious. So
continuing his career with the Jim Henson Company, as I do believe baby Toby is the baby in Labyrinth.
Right.
Isn't that right?
Which Scott and I discussed on the limited series, 1986 series over on the Film Buy. And I can honestly say I do enjoy that movie, but this one I like a lot better. just saying. I know that one has Jennifer Connelly, but that's and it anyway, listen to that episode if you want to hear our opinions on that one. So
I do love Labyrinth, but this is just so I love an auteur going whole hog.
Yes.
I don't care if kids run screaming from the theater. This is what kids need in their lives, and I'm going to give it to them.
Yeah.
So I do find it interesting that you mentioned how well it did in France and Japan. Now, on the flip side of that, the movie was banned in several Islamic countries due to the content that was deemed sacrilegious. Every Arabic dubbed and Farsi dubbed copy was destroyed by censors. So, wow. That's kind of harsh.
Yeah.
Leo, do you have any fun facts you want to share with the group?
I do. I actually have, to me, quite an adorable one. So pre-production work revolved around Brian Froud's designs without a finished script. When Froud originally presented Jim Henson with concept drawings for the crystal, Henson seemed perplexed. When Froud asked why, Henson said he had no idea what the designs were for. When first told of the project, Froud had misunderstood Henson and his intention to call the movie The Dark Chrysalis, referring to the sexist dominance over the world. Henson, however, loved Froud's concept art so much that he integrated the idea of the crystal into the storyline and kind of redid his whole initial draft in order to accommodate this new artifact because he loved the artwork so much.
Very cool. Very cool. Scott, do you have any trivia you want to share?
Yeah, so I highly recommend, if you have a chance, seeing these things, kind of artifacts and props from the movie in person. Because with a lot of the puppets of that era, it's made with material that wasn't necessarily built to last. So as you've seen with Yoda from Empire Strikes Back, for example, it deteriorates and withers and becomes almost unrecognizable. The Henson family is doing their best to preserve these items, but I would say as soon as you can, grab a chance to see them. I've been lucky enough to see them in 3 different places, but only one of them is still around today. So at the Jim Henson lot in California, I was lucky enough to have a very dear friend set up a private mini tour of the Henson lot where the original Charlie Chaplin lot was.
Wow.
And one of the pieces they had there was Skek Echt, the
Right.
ornamentalist. And all that was separating me from this prop was a velvet rope. So I was 2 inches away, nose to nose, with something that terrified me as a kid, and the Emperor's scepter. So it's just fascinating to see this stuff in person. My son Ian was working at COSI in Columbus when they had the Jim Henson tour. And at that time, we saw Aughra, Jen, Kira, a lot of other Muppet type props. But the one place that I would recommend that's still around, Museum of the Moving Image in Queens, New York, has an ongoing exhibit that includes a lot more items, including Skek Zak, the ritual master, the person that had the lowest voice when they were talking in ceremony and whatnot.
I love that guy.
Oh my goodness.
I love his voice.
You can have a staring contest with this thing.
Wow.
But it's fascinating. If you've ever had any interest in this at all, Museum of the Moving Image, Queens, New York, check it out. You won't be disappointed.
Fantastic.
Going off of that, I would also highly recommend, whether through physical media being better than streaming and my catchphrase, those sweet, sweet bonus features, or just going on YouTube, I highly recommend looking at any kind of making ofs and behind the scenes you can get your hands on. It is just you really grow to appreciate all of the hard work and imagination that went into this film, and you'll get to hear Frank Oz's on-set voice for Aughra, which is just, it's glorious. It's all of the things. Like, I love everything about Aughra, and I love her voice, but there's a small part of me that wishes we had a cut of this movie with entirely in the languages of Thra, no English, and I really wish that there was a cut of this where it's just Frank's dialogue, because that man, oh my god.
Right.
I'll double down on that and say that when you watch these behind the scenes, like, people might be kind of hesitant to see them because it's like, once I know how it works, then I won't be able to see the puppet. That I don't think that's the case. I've seen a lot of those behind the scenes, and it's never been the case. It instantly it draws you back in, and it doesn't kind of ruin the illusion. So totally agree.
It's not going to ruin the illusion at all. You just grow to appreciate, like, they're making magic. They took latex and clay and they made a living being.
Right. Well, and it's so much more than just like a Muppet movie, right? Like, it might be kind of dismissed or disregarded by some as like, oh, the Muppet guy. Well, I don't know. I don't want to see a bunch of Muppets. It is so far from that. There's so
Yeah.
many advanced techniques that they invented on the set, on the fly, just to say, like, how would we make this work? And they'd have to just figure it out, which has become now techniques that they follow to this day, right?
Right.
They incorporate Japanese bunraku kind of sensibilities because they have the characters having that sense of weight, and the realism in this is just amazing. It's
the
true art
heft,
form.
the heft to the Gartham alone. Like I feel bad for those actors. They had to hang them on racks for like 5-minute break periods just to get through this movie. But like it was so worth it. Like if anybody who if somehow we get a Venn diagram crossing of people who were Gartham on this movie and people who listen to this podcast, if you're listening, guys, please know that your hard work was totally worth it.
Oh yeah.
Love the Gartham.
Like them and the guys inside Jabba the Hutt. Like it was worth it.
Oh yeah. Yep.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on.
That was totally wicked!
It's time for That Was Totally Wicked. These are things we love about the film. So, Liam, why don't you go first? What's something you love about The Dark Crystal?
Honestly, my favorite thing is the message and the philosophy regarding good and evil in this movie. I have always had a great love of philosophy and mythology and cultures from all around the world. I get disappointed in Hollywood sometimes because, like, as much as I love Star Wars and all of the aspects of the various religions surrounding the Force, I'm always overall disappointed, particularly in, like, this was my biggest gripe about The Rise of Skywalker. Like, not necessarily anything else. It was the fact that we are still, after how many years is it now, guys, that we're making these movies, and we're still sticking to the quote-unquote balance being the destruction of evil and the victory of good, when like that's not what balance is. And I love this movie going whole hog on the idea not only that we must meld the two parts together and accept both light and darkness within ourselves in order to truly make the world green and good, but that both sides have their merits and their failings. The Skeksis are evil, but they do have great skill at taking over the world and ruling it. The mystics are pure and wise and good, and yet they're lost in this haze of forgetfulness. It's even worse in the novelization, where you get more details when Jen is given his mission. He's not even told about the shard or what he must do. He's just told to go and see Agra, and then when he gets there, Agra's like, what do you mean they didn't tell you anything?
Yeah,
like, you don't even know what the shard is?
We'll get back to that a little bit later. I promise.
That is a great point. Like,
so
at some point they describe the fact that they've been around for thousands of years, and it's like, you guys have 4 arms, a bunch of intelligence, and over the span of 1,000 years you couldn't draw a map. Like,
seriously,
maybe write this down.
Yeah,
and like his master is dying. He's like, "Oh, I should have told you this stuff before." And Jen's like, "You think?" Like,
so I love this idea that like, but even like the light side can have its like fallacies, and we're like acknowledging that. And the resolution of the film is not the destruction of the Skeksis, but the two halves being reunited with each other, and them acknowledging their hubris of trying to control one side instead of embracing it. I love that. I'll talk about it more later, but the final lines of this film are just beautiful.
Yep.
Very good. All right, Scott, something you love about the film?
Can I name 3 if I do them quick?
Sure, go right ahead.
I've already talked about the puppetry, the sheer volume of it. It's a masterclass in practical effects. Again, watch like 10 minutes of this and tell me it's not amazing to see them do this in 1982.
Right.
The music, I think, is fantastic and haunting. It's a bit repetitious at times, But that opening shot of the Castle of the Crystal
Right.
is just made so much more by the music and the soundtrack.
Right.
Which brings around the third thing, which is the sets. The Castle of the crystal itself, the ornate design of everything. I'm exhausted by thinking about the planning and the design and the creation of Aughra's castle or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I want to live in her observatory so bad.
Yeah,
Yes.
except you keep having to duck under things. Like she kept having to like whoop.
Yeah, but she knew it was coming too. It's not like it was a surprise. She's been doing this long enough. She's like, and got a duck. And
exactly.
duck.
Which is one of the things that I found fascinating this time. I was imagining the puppeteer in Aughra's, setup in the puppet. There has to be a behind the scenes where somebody's like, and duck for a planet.
Right.
And duck for a planet.
Right.
That probably happened once.
Right.
Frank has like a radio in his ear.
But to your point, Scott, yes, the world building in this film is unbelievable. They not only do they do a great job with our main creatures, main characters, whatever. I mean, they show us the Skeksis and the Gelflings and the Mystics, whatever. But you have all these different creatures, you have all these different plants, the flora, the fauna, all this thing that look different enough, but also, you can kind of pick it out. Like when he gets to Aughra's castle, and those plants, they roll away. They're like these giant sea anemones, and they roll away, and you're like,
right,
what the hell is that? And there's nothing in this that looks like it came from something else. It's like, oh, that's what they did. That's what they did. But they just made sure every single inch was living and breathing and looking like another world. So, and to your point with the Aughra's solar system, oh my God, I want one of those. Not it doesn't have to be the full size because I wouldn't know where to put it, but to have one like I could put on a desk that just works like that and just constantly goes. My God, I remember the first time you saw it, my brain went, oh, I want that. And then of course later Jin uses it to escape, which is just a great idea. So they did such a great job making sure that there was nothing left to chance. It was all very planned. It all looked great. And they did such a fantastic job making the whole world look wonderful. Now, I've said this many times before when it comes to Henson and other people. So I love that Jim Henson was not afraid to tell a story with darkness to it. Okay. Like the Brothers Grimm before him, and this is their stories kind of inspired him, and Walt Disney as well. He didn't talk down to children. You know what I mean? He knew that kids would get it and enjoy it. And yeah, it might have scared us, but we went back and watched it. And we watched it and we watched it, and it stood the test of time. With so many of us of a certain age that even in the book Ready Player One, one of the characters in there, the girl, the wife of Og, took the name of Kira because it was her favorite character from the Dark Crystal. So, I mean, it made it into books. He knew, and it's enough. We keep dumbing down things for kids because we think, oh, they can't get it. Stop it. You're just hurting them. Knock it off. Yep. And so Jim took a chance. Like you said before, he went total auteur and said, I don't care. I'm making my movie. And him and Frank did. And thank you very much for doing so. Thank you very much. So,
well, and I read this in the trivia. I love that Jim thought this way and respected kids on this level, because it's similar to, there's this great quote from Don Bluth where he says, you can show kids whatever you want as long as you put a happy ending in there.
Right.
Like, as long as there's a happy ending before the credits roll, you can show kids whatever you want and they'll be fine. And like, obviously we don't want our kids to experience like negative things because, we want to have happy lives for our children. But if you never, Finding Nemo, if you never let anything happen to them, then nothing will ever happen to them.
Right.
If they fear and darkness is so crucial in when you do it in this way, or like films like Coraline, because the stories we tell are like training wheels. You read a scary story, and so you learn how to deal with fear. So when something actually scary happens, you know how to deal with it, and you can make the decisions you need to make. So it's so important to respect kids and treat them as human beings.
I find that incredibly amusing, considering I know how your mom used to show you movies, and
yes,
she used to skip certain scenes.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Well, there's a fine line between, getting sleep that night and helping them grow through fear, right?
You gotta draw a timeline. You wait until they're 5, then you show them Dark Crystal. You wait until they're 9, then you show them Gremlins. Like, there's a timeline you gotta make.
and by the same token, like, I totally agree. Like, a lot of the things that are accessible to kids, I will say, that respect them are the ones that we keep coming back to as, wow, this was really formative. This was an amazing thing that has continued to stick with me, right? Because it's a source of terror, but it's also a contained one, right? And if you have that blended with imagination, then the kids are using their imagination to kind of fight against their fears, fight back against what they think is in the closet, whatever. They can always turn it off. They can always step out of the theater. But if you make it fascinating enough, they want to step back in again because they want to face it down and keep building through that, right? He took a lot of big swings toward, like, let's show them something fascinating yet terrifying, like the essence draining sequences, especially the first one.
It's like I was talking to Mom about this when we rewatched it the other night. Like, of all of the things I've seen, like, there's like being severed from your demon in his Dark Materials, then the essence draining from this movie, and then like the Dementor's kiss in Prisoner of Azkaban. Like that's the ranking for me.
Well, and thinking about the sequencing of this, like, you see the podlings, you see them happy and joyous, and it's almost like a hairless Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, right? Like, they're drinking and swinging and all this other kind of stuff, and then one of them is captured and put in this miniature Clockwork Orange kind of situation where you see them just, like, quickly get emaciated, and like they're watching the most horrific thing they can see. I'm guessing like a copy of this movie. Like, dear God. But it's to take chances like that on something that is not necessarily 100% meant for kids, but meant to be accessible to kids, is a great idea. I'm glad he did it. I'm glad they did it.
Yep, I agree. Yeah,
gotta love that 80s PG.
Right. So so Liam, on your scale of things that are terrifying to watch, where does the Nazis melting in Raiders of the Lost Ark fall? Are they below all the other ones you just mentioned, or what?
That might. Well, I don't know. It's tough because, like, on the one hand, I wanna replace the Dementors with that in third place, but on the other hand, like, I wasn't really horrified because, like, they're Nazis, they're bad people. Like, I don't really care when the horrible, awful happens to, like, bad. Like, they're Nazis. It's okay.
Yeah, I think I scarred my daughter by showing that a little too early to her.
Well, the benefit for me was, for the first couple of times watching that movie, they had me play along with Indy, where like, no, you don't look. You're not supposed to look at the Ark,
right?
And so that was how I got through the first couple of viewings.
Yeah, nice. Right. So Liam, do you have anything else you want to mention before we move on?
She's not my favorite, so I'll talk about her here.
Okay.
I really love Kira. I love how strongly the female character is written. I love the strengths that she has, where, like, it's hard to describe, but, like, they are somewhat feminine, like, they're kind of princess qualities. Like, you know, she can talk to the animals like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, but, like, it comes into play later where, like, she's using that power to take the Landstriders into battle.
Right.
And, like, one of my favorite scenes in this entire movie is when the Skeksis play that old thing of, like, give us the shard and we'll let her live.
Right.
And Jen's like, okay, whatever you want. And Kira's like, what are you doing? No! Steal the crystal, moron! That's why we're here! Our lives are not important! Like, it's a very Princess Leia mentality of, like...
She's definitely way more prepared for this whole situation than Jin is. Because he just, you know, she's definitely, I just find it funny that she's been surrounded by podlings and knows a lot more. He was raised by mystics and seems to be clueless. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. So
yeah, she's growing up in the Shire, and
he's been smoking weed in the valley the whole time. Like, talk about the Shire. Like, I think the mystics had had access to some halflings leaf, if you know what I mean. But yeah, no, Kira's like, well, and Kira is so much more battle hardened because, like, yeah, she's with like the hippie podlings, but like also living through like these attacks.
Right.
Like the Garthan come on the regular, and they I feel like the podlings are captured pretty easily, but like in my head, like especially once Kira enters the picture, like there's some kind of like resistance. Like they're not going down without a fight. Like they're little podlings, but they're kicking and screaming the whole way. Like
yeah.
But so I really love Jim's respect for women, and I feel like it comes through in this movie and Aughra as well. Like Aughra's they talk about, oh, the mystics are all wise and all knowing. Aughra's literally the smartest person in the entire movie. Literally the smartest person.
And not afraid of the Skeksis at all. Like literally like she's blasting them and right in front of him.
Yeah, she's in the middle of their castle, and she's like hexing them and swearing at them, and she like takes a little bottle off the table like she's robbing them as they watch her. Like she kicks a Gartham in the leg, like
calls him crap brain henchman. I'm like, wow, I love it.
Yep.
She's
and
so good.
Kira has one of the most badass lines, I think, or probably the only badass line in this movie, where she sprouts the wings.
Yes.
And he's like, well, I don't have wings. And she's like, of course not. You're a boy.
Yes.
And then floats him down to safety. And it's like,
I love that moment. It's so good.
I love it. It's very good. All right. Let's go ahead and move on.
No, sir. I didn't like it.
It's time for No Sir, I Didn't Like It. These are things we don't like or don't work with in the film. Scott, you get to go first.
Except for one line, Jen's dialogue is so odd.
Yes.
Like the things that he says, it just feels very kind of like stilted and almost out of place, whereas Kira's dialogue seems to flow pretty naturally as one person would talk to another. It almost feels like maybe Jen's dialogue had been redubbed. And I noticed that with the Skeksis, like what they wrote to replace that dialogue fits, but it's also a little stilted and odd.
Right.
There's the one line that I love, which is just a genius way of describing it. When they come up to the temple and they see writing, and she's like, what's writing? And he's like, words that stay.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's 3 words that just totally capture writing in the most simple terms. But the rest of the dialogue, it just felt like, especially when he's kind of setting out on his own and he's like, well, I got to do this alone. Okay. Alone then. And I'm
okay. So I'm going to agree with you mostly. I actually, when it comes to Jen, I actually don't like his narration. You know what I mean? I would much rather him be talking to himself, because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm like, there's a lot of times when I'm debating things, I say it out loud, you know? And so to me, I don't like his narration. It kind of throws me off a little bit. I do like alone then. And then, cause he brings it back later when she goes with him, she goes, together. I do like that.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree. His dialogue seems a bit, wonky. And I kind of chalk that up to him growing up around mystics who don't seem to talk a lot. So he really doesn't have a lot of interaction. He might have been there for a long time, but there's not like they're chatty or whatever.
Right.
So I just don't like his narration. I think it was kind of pointless. And maybe either have him talk to himself, or because a lot of lines he says aren't really necessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's I think it was done just because, yes, it is a kid's film, so there needs to be some dialogue. But no, I agree with you for the most part on that. So yeah. All right. Liam, something you don't like about the film?
Yeah, I feel like you guys are right. I remember there's a section in the novelization where it talks about how the Skeksis are Skeksis. I'm sorry, I do this all the time. The mystics are very careful with their voices. Because like there's a point where Jen first gets his flute and he's learning to play, and he wants the Mystics to sing with him because their song is so beautiful, but they have to be very careful because if they sing too loudly, it gets into that like throaty like vocal call that they do, and it will like shake the rocks, like because their magic is connected to Thra, the earth will react. So they can only sing in whispers, and that hurts their throats, so they don't sing a lot. So I feel like part of the idea, I feel like if this movie, not necessarily had been longer, but just we had been able to spend more time with Jen,
right?
We would have gotten more of his character and would have gotten the idea that like he is sheltered. Like that valley there's not a lot going in and out of that lockbox. So that's what I feel like that's why he's so the idea is that he latches onto Kira so immediately, not just because it's another of his kind, but because like it's another person who acts like a person and not like I'm in the Zen meditation of the ages type of thing. But yeah, I feel like I don't hate Jen's dialogue. I just wish that it was not inner thoughts, because that just sounds that's very Uncanny Valley to me. When I think of Uncanny Valley, I don't think of like imagery so much as like moments where dialogue that should just be a character talking to itself is the character's mouth is not moving and it's just inner thoughts.
Right.
I really wish they'd just let Jen talk to himself. I don't know why Hollywood has such like a phobia of depicting that, because it's a thing that happens.
Yes, it is.
My two dislikes are just the Chamberlain in general. Like it's I'm sorry. This is yet another one of my catchphrases. It's not that they did a bad job. It's their goal was accomplished too well. I cannot. I'm with the Garthen Master. Like I hate Joe Whimper.
His whimper.
Like just shut up. I wanted to just rip his head off. Like my God.
So I actually, I might have told this story before, but when I was in college, I had a professor, and it was for our policies and regulations class for FCC policies and regs. And she would say stuff and then she would go like that. And after like a couple days of class, I looked at a friend of mine and I go, my God, it's Chamberlain. So after like the third class, we would look at, every time she did that, we would look at each other and we just kind of smile. One day after class, she pulled us aside. She asked us, "Why do you guys keep smiling during class?" We told her, said, "Have you ever seen The Dark Crystal?" And she's like, "Yes." I go, "And you remind us of Chamberlain with your whimpers." She goes, "Oh my God, I never thought of that." So it was just very funny. And so I'm sorry, I like Chamberlain. So you're just wrong. You're just wrong.
Okay. Well.
So exam days were trial by stone.
They were.
Toxica.
Now he definitely is hard to handle, but we'll get to
lot. It's just a lot.
But you know what? Out of all the Skeksis, he had a plan.
Yeah.
It failed. He came up with another plan. He succeeded, and he got back into the castle. You know what I mean?
He's low key kind of the smartest of the Gartham.
Oh, absolutely.
The Skeksis.
Yeah, he is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, he's a very good politician. You know?
Yeah.
he got himself back in there.
Like if the whole plot of the movie hadn't happened, like he might have ended up being the emperor. Like that, I could totally see the Chamberlain like maneuvering the pieces just right.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And I would have gotten away for it too if you weren't for you pesky gelflings and your dog.
I would be curious to know who Chamberlain's other half is. Like, what was his mystic counterpart like?
Oh, I can't remember.
Well, you remember he got his when he stabs him, he does bleed. I don't remember which one that was, but he does say, "Oh, my hand," and I don't remember, because for me, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard for me to keep track of which of the mystics are which, because they all kind of look a little bit too similar, and we don't get a lot of time with the mystics. We don't really see.
That's my other complaint. I hate the Chamberlain, and my biggest complaint, speaking of balance, the mystics are one of my favorite parts of this movie, and this movie is like 80% Skeksis, 20% Mystics, and it makes me so sad. It's like every time we have to leave Dagobah in Empire Strikes Back, it's like, no, I want to stay with Yoda. This is more fun. I don't want to go fight Darth Vader.
Right? Yeah. No. And I think that plays into how the film opens, because you literally open with the death of both the Emperor and the wisest mystic. You don't even have chance to get to know, because the story starts right then. You know what I mean? And the Great Conjunction is coming, so it's like, okay, let's get going. So yeah, there is definitely very lopsided with Skeksis versus Mystics. So I agree with that. There definitely needs to be more time in that valley, more time with Jen. And so yes, I agree 100% with that.
I just I want to say that this movie needs another hour, but at the same time I don't, because like it's so well edited and paced. It's like the first Ghostbusters. It's like we want more of this world and we want more details, but like I feel like to add another hour, like that way lies folly.
Well, you don't need to add an hour. You could add 15, 20 minutes, and that would be enough.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, like a good half an hour, 25 minutes. Yeah, but that's why I'm so glad that this was not one of those like 80s goodness like Krull, where like it just completely fell by the wayside. Like I'm so glad the Dark Crystal is alive and well, and there's so much ancillary media to consume.
Right. Yeah.
I'm so glad that this mythos didn't die, because like, does anybody else want more of Krull? I do.
I wouldn't mind it. I'd love to see a remake done well, because they could do that. Totally do that. So far I've agreed with both of you for the most part. I still don't have a problem with Chamberlain, but so we've kind of touched on it a little bit. Jen is definitely sheltered from where he comes from in the valley. He's kind of a lousy hero. He never really gets better at what he's doing. And to Scott's earlier point, you have the wisest mystic, and you never once trained this guy, prepped this guy. He's going to have to save your world, and you don't do anything until like a few minutes before you're dead to tell him about anything. That doesn't seem very wise to me. There seems like a giant flaw there that, I don't know. It just seems like that was poorly planned. And another minor complaint I have, it's a great scene in Agra's, astronomy or whatever, her little castle, her hut or whatever. When Jen escapes out the window and down the hill, that shot of him looking back at Agra's, it looks like he's 7 or 8 miles away. And he just slid down the mountain. It's not like he's that far. If he slid that far, there would be nothing left of Jen. It would be all over the side of the mountain. So there was a little bit of a perspective issue I had with that. But for the most part, that's pretty much it.
They paid good money for that model kit, Dayton. We're going to use the shot. I don't care if the shot's out of focus. We're doing it.
I'd probably
between falling out the window and getting where he got. He fell on a bunch of creatures that are like a big slip and slide, and just made him go that much further. Maybe that was it.
Maybe
he bounced off a Nebri, landed on a couple of fizz gigs that turned into roller skates.
Right.
There's a whole Rube Goldberg machine that you didn't see.
He just seemed a bit far away for as far as he slid. But anyway, not a deal breaker. Not a deal breaker, but perspective. Sometimes perspective. So
I feel like Jen's mystic is a kindred spirit to the engineer in Galaxy Quest. When it's like, hey, so the planets are gonna align like today or whatever, so maybe walk for a day to this old lady's house and get a shard. You'll figure it out, I'm sure. Anyway, I gotta go. See ya. Dies.
Yeah.
Come on. Go back and check out our Galaxy Quest episode for more discussion on that particular movie. What a fantastic movie. Nice, nice call. That's ridiculous. I love it though.
Yeah, I will say, my obsession with the philosophy of this movie leads me to believe that the fallacy of the mystics is part of the point. But I will say, as much as I enjoy Jen as a character, at the same time, I have the same love-hate relationship with him as I do with Frodo in Lord of the Rings. like Frodo's so like kind of captivating, but at the same time I'm like, my God, I hate that you're bad at this. Like Frodo's so like I don't understand. I hate that Samwise wasn't the ring bearer because like if you read Return of the King, like Sam picks up the ring and starts on his way, and he was gonna make it because Sauron can't figure out anything to tempt him because he's like, I don't know, the whole planet will be a garden, I guess. And Samwise is like, that's way too much garden for one little Gamgee. No, thank you, Mr. Sauron. Like, I hate it when the hero is interesting, but also really, really bad at what they're doing.
Yep. I agree with that.
I love what you've been saying about balance, because when you're thinking about how much the Skeksis kind of represent trying to engineer and control and kill people to make sure that the prophecy doesn't come through, the mystics kind of go with the flow of the universe, and they just know that something is going to happen. They've been, spreading the dust and whatever, but they start on this long trek assuming that Jen is going to make it, so that they can be in the right place at the right time just by walking incredibly slowly.
Yes.
Really, like
it's a Sunday stroll.
that moment when the TIE fighter eyed Skeksis gets knocked into the shaft of fire, and then cut to the one mystic vanishing.
Right.
The way they just kind of like turn and look, and they're like, well, it's a long way to Tipperary. Like
it looks
keep
like
going.
Hey guys, Gary just exploded fire. Let's keep going.
We're all fine, but the animal is inside out. And it exploded.
Okay. Let's get this back on track.
Back on track.
We've hit Galaxy Quest, Lord of the Rings.
Here's the thing about Jen's ineptness, though. The prophecy says the two made one by Gelfling hand or else by none. It does not, it is simply saying that a Gelfling must do it. It does not say how many Gelflings. So maybe the idea is that to serve balance, Jen can't succeed without Kira. They have to have two of them because Kira's strengths fill in Jen's weaknesses.
Yep, that's true.
Good point.
Fair.
All right. Any other complaints before we move on?
Nope.
All right. We're going to take a quick promo break, and when we get back, we're going to hit some favorites and give this film a rating.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?
Turn your dial to find the frequency of the past.
Captain Advice.
Where the classic stories of mysteries, sci-fi, thrillers, and suspense are found waiting to be heard once again.
Another case for Nick Carter, Master Detective.
You'll find a variety of those stories here, in their original form, where each episode takes you to another place or time.
The Man of Bronze, Doc Savage.
But only when you find the mystery frequency. Available everywhere.
The shadow knows.
Why are you smiling like that?
I just like to smile. Smiling's my favorite.
Make work your favorite. That's your favorite, okay?
Okay.
Work is your new favorite.
Fine.
It's time for Smiling's My Favorite. This is some favorite things about the film, as well as some favorite Henson things. So first of all, favorite character. Scott.
I'm going to guess at what other people are going to say. So I'm going to say Chamberlain for being the smartest of the Skeksis.
You took mine. Come on, man.
I can change if you want me to.
No, that's okay.
Hear me out. Because I only agree with Liam 10%, because I could have lived forever without seeing naked Chamberlain. Like when they're stripping all those stuff, it's just kind of like, oh boy.
But see, what's so cool about that is they have all this clothes on. They look so massive. When you remove them, they're frail.
Yes.
And so I think that's really important because they present themselves as very strong and whatever, but they're really frail and going to fall apart, and that, so I think that was important. But yes, it's still creepy, but it's important.
Reading the trivia makes that even worse, though, because when you read the trivia on IMDb, you realize, and then you watch that scene again, you see that like the Mystics, the Skeksis do have 4 arms, but their other pair is like all shriveled and
All withered.
rotten, like it drank from the wrong grail, and
I
it's
wondered
just
about that.
sucked up to their side, and it's so nasty. And it's like, oh god, it's like a deformed chicken.
But as much as the Skeksis' design and their look and their, approach was terrifying, the one that always scared me the most was Chamberlain. Like the one that was waiting in my closet to eat me as a kid was the one that was scheming and conniving enough and smart enough to actually do it. So I got to give props to Chamberlain.
All right.
Well, especially because there's that other sequence when they're in the Gelfling ruins, and then he's like putting the come hither on Jen and like almost gets him to like.
Right. He's doing the Ka thing from Jungle Book.
He
is.
Like
the trust in me. Yeah.
Like, no, don't do it. No, Jen. Stranger danger, Jen.
All right.
Didn't watch any Sonic Says.
Jeez. All right. Let's focus on this film. All right, Liam, your favorite character.
Aughra, hands down Aughra. I love me like a sassy witch. I grew up with Clash of the Titans, so like seeing another Stygian witch with a weird eyeball is really
so
fun.
Cool.
Yeah, I just like I love her dialogue so much, like the way she talks about like the Great Conjunction is the end of the world or the beginning,
right.
It's all the same, big change. I love this type of like deep prophetic wisdom spoken very rapid fire, because I don't have time for this. Like, I got a meeting at 2. We gotta go, buddy. Like, we're on the clock here.
Right. All right.
But so I love her design, and I just anytime Frank Oz is a sassy woman in a Muppet movie, like it's great.
Well, okay. All right. Favorite scene, Scott.
The Landstriders.
All right.
I think it was a genius move to show that you can have stilt walkers running in costume.
Yep.
Those just fascinate me to know.
That effect is glorious.
It is so good. And they're apparently badass because their claws or their spit, I can't figure out what it is, can do damage to the Garthim.
It's like a stinger. They have like a stinger thing that comes out of their mouth like a
it's
stingray.
It's like they're horseflies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a nice little spark when it hits. They're really cool. They're something else for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah, me too. All right, Liam, your favorite scene?
I really love the 2 Gelflings walking through the ruins of their own culture, because it reminds me of Atlantis the Lost Empire, when Milo realizes that none of the Atlanteans can read their own language. But hands down, my favorite scene has to be the ending, just because I love the way that lead Urksek delivers the message of the film, and I love that final line of "Hold her close to you. She is a part of you, as we all are part of each other." Like, I low-key cry a little bit.
All right. So my favorite scene is actually the dinner at the Podling Village. So love the music. I love the feel of that. It's like it's the only time in the entire film where there's true happiness happening. There's fun going on. There's no immediate danger. And you get some decent dialogue between Jen and Kara. They're talking about, he's saying, well, he told me this and then he died. And, he's
I love the way Jen says that. And that's all. And then he died.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell, right?
Yeah. So it's a really good scene. And then you have all that fun and he's dancing and whatever. He's learning their language. And then the Gartham show up to the party and start tearing the place apart. and then we get Chamberlain shows up and she's like, what was that? And she's like, Skeksy. So he gets more information. We get some more information from them. And we get, we get a little respite from the chase and from the whole thing with that. So I really enjoy that scene. It's a lot of fun.
I love that we get to dip into Fraggle Rock for a minute. And Like Jen gets, I love anytime Jen uses his flute, especially when he plays it while Kira sings.
Yeah.
I love when he shares his music with others, and I love the like George Harrison analog on the sitar, who's like jamming his head back and forth. Like
Right.
that guy is the life of the party right there.
Yes,
They're
he
the
is.
ones that supply the Thra weed to the Mystics.
There you
Yes, 100%. They're the growers. Like, hey man, come on down to Burbank.
go. Okay. Favorite creature or race from the film, Scott?
I'm surprised this didn't come up as a character, so I'll just go ahead and put my vote in for the Dark Crystals, Chewbacca, the toothiest Tribble, Fizzgig.
Yes, Fizzgig.
And I don't know whether to say that's character or species because there were none of the other Fizzgigs around, but I'll give it to Fizzgig because he was like as the Chewie, he's like, I'm smart enough to know how to get stuff done. I'm the hairball that knows how to get stuff done. Even when I fall into the chasm of the crystal, he's biting that arm to hold on for dear life, and he's like, well,
he bites
something will
Chamberlain.
happen.
Like he straight up latches onto a Skeksis.
And just the jaws, it's like, watching Steven Tyler yawn. It's like, oh my God, how is that physically possible?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, that's so good. All right, Liam?
I got to give it to the Landstriders. The Landstriders walked so that Del Toro could run. I swear to God, Del Toro had to watch this movie when he was a kid. Because when you really look at them, like, those things are ugly as hell. Yes. And yet, like, if you look at the individual parts and the, like, animals, what inspire them, that's an ugly creature.
Yes,
and
it is.
yet, just by doing so much and yet so little, that you fall in love with them. They are magnificent, and, like, the way they move, the, like writing music that plays when they run, like, it's just glorious. The fact that like, if it weren't for the fact that the one got run off and fell over the cliff, like, they totally would have beat those Gartham.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They had the Gartham on the run. It's just like when it's 1 against a dozen instead of 2 against a dozen. Like, it's not really a fair fight. But no, I love those Landstriders. They are glorious.
Well, gloriously horrific. It's like a catfish had a baby with a giraffe, right? It's kind of like, oh God,
I know,
how did
like,
those two meet up?
I should be repulsed, but it's like a Del Toro movie. Like, more Gilman, please. Like, yes,
right. Yeah, no, the Landstriders were my answer too. I love that. Just it's such a great creation, the engineering behind the whole thing, and it just looks so good on screen. So fantastic.
Well, like, only Jim Henson would like come up with the idea to make a creature that moves like that. Like,
right. All right. So favorite non-Muppet series, special, or film. So Scott, if necessary, you can pick a film and a series. So make it easier for you guys. So Scott, you get to go first.
So I can pick one of each
if you'd like to. I did. I did.
Then I'm going to say The Storyteller, followed by Labyrinth.
Really? Okay.
I think Labyrinth is a great follow-up to this in terms of making things more accessible, and then, still terrifying kids with the goblins in the closet that are kidnapping the baby. But The Storyteller is one that I'm afraid is going to get lost to time.
Yeah.
Because it's not discussed very much. It is a fascinating exploration in puppetry. It's some amazing stories told in a brilliantly inventive way, and some great acting by our host. I forget
John Hurt.
Thank you, John Hurt. Oh my God, does he knock it out of the park? Especially with the Stone Soup episode.
Oh yes,
love
A Story
it cover
Short.
to cover.
I love that one.
It's one of the reasons that I think physical media is so necessary, is because I own that series. I will never let it go.
I got it on Amazon Prime. I need a physical copy.
Love it.
Yep, you do. All right, Liam, your answer.
I'm gonna since you gave us permission to cheat, I'm gonna cheat even further. We watch Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas every year.
Yeah, that's great. It is great.
Along with Muppet Family Christmas.
Yep.
I love Fraggle Rock. I have the entire series of Fraggle Rock
I do too.
On DVD. But my favorite is Jim Henson's The Storyteller. I really wish they would bring this series back and make more of them. And I really hope that this never gets, like, fallen by the wayside, because it really is just the most glorious thing ever. Also, Brian Henson's The Dog is the ultimate dog.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the ultimate dog.
Yeah.
The most dog to ever dog.
A little above Sprocket in Fraggle Rock.
Yeah. Like it goes Brian Henson and then Sprocket.
All right. So, film-wise, The Dark Crystal is my favorite. And TV series, I'm going to go with Fraggle Rock, just because I have so many fond memories of watching that show when it first started. And like Liam, I do actually own the entire series on DVD in a nice, beautiful collector's series. It's beautiful. It's over there on the shelf. So those are my answers. And also, if you haven't yet, make sure to check out the wonderful documentary Idea Man on Disney Plus. It is a fantastic documentary about Jim Henson. And if you have a heart at all, you will cry.
Oh, I cried hard multiple times.
Yes. If you don't, make sure you check your heartbeat, because you might be dead. All right. Let's hit some final words and rating on this particular film. 1 to 5 film reels. Scott, what do you have to say, and what's your rating?
Absolutely beautiful movie. Don't be scared away if you don't understand what's happening. Just observe it, because it's completely worth it. I went between a 4 and a 5. I'll go ahead and notch it up to a 5, because it's the weirdest movie that I have a hard time understanding, but still stands the test of time. So all that being said, you've got to give it a 5.
All right. At least. Liam?
One of the most pure motion pictures I have ever seen. Whatever starship you care to use for your travels, please visit the planet of Thra. You will not regret it. 5 film reels.
All right. So, as I said at the beginning, I do love this film. I've loved it since the first time I saw it in the theater. And the creativity, the production design, the creatures, the story are all timeless, which explains why we got a Netflix series years after this film, why there are graphic novels, why there are books, why there is merchandise in the stores still, so many years later. I do love it. I don't necessarily agree with the rating the other two guys did. I gave it a 4 out of 5 because they're of the things I mentioned before, the problems I have it. But it is one, like I said, I own the VHS, I have the DVD, and I will probably be getting the 4K edition as well, because might as well complete my set.
We gotta all get a copy and then do a thing of Age of Resistance and like all like touch our shards to the screen.
All right, fantastic. All right, fantastic discussion, gentlemen. I appreciate it so much. I'm glad you guys were able to join me as big Muppet fans and Jim Henson fans as you are. I couldn't think of 2 better people to have on this particular episode, so thank you very much. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Dayton. That was really sweet of you to say. I was happy to be here.
And Scott, what do you guys have going on over there at a film buy? I know you have multiple limited series. What's going on over there?
So I'll echo what Liam said. Thank you for saying that. Always a pleasure to be here. I have so much fun being on these episodes. So keep them coming. We have a new year, new season of Phaser Set to Stun coming out on a Film by podcast. We are going to talk about Strange New Worlds. We're going to talk about Section 31. We're going to dive into the movies. And eventually we're going to get into some of the series like Deep Space Nine. So if you're a fan of Trek, or if you're curious about it, it's a great place to step in.
Very good. Very good. I do want to mention that our Patreon for this month was a choice by Liam. We are discussing a Hayao Miyazaki film, Spirited Away, which I had never seen until I watched it for that Patreon episode. So make sure to check out my reactions and Liam's as well on that particular episode. It should be streaming by the time this comes out. If not, it should be there soon. So check that out. Speaking of Patreon, we also have some other episodes over there, recent ones including Turning Red with our special guests, Lauren and Russ. And we did a review of the film yesterday with Def Dave, Mike Vermillion, and John Wright. And coming soon, maybe next month, we're going to do our top 7 DVD Blu-ray bonus features. So that will be pretty awesome. Kind of, jumping into the physical media thing that we all appreciate so very much. Do us a favor, hop on over on social media. Share your thoughts with this particular episode, with this film. Have you seen it? What do you think? Have you watched the Netflix series? Let us know over there. We see the comments. We will interact with you, I promise, and we will share your responses on an episode. Rate and review the podcast and share the podcast as well. If we see your review, we will gladly share it on an episode as well as share it on social media. Next week, Jeff and Dave from A Film By will be over here to discuss the 1951 The Thing from Another World and the 1982 remake from John Carpenter. That's going to be a lot of fun. February is coming soon. I can't believe we're already talking about February. We are doing top 7 saddest songs with special guest Lauren from the Beard Owl podcast, the film Hidden Figures, the album Time's Up from Living Color. Now, later this year, we are doing a big deep dive on Disney through the decades. We're going to hit one film each decade and also discuss a lot of the notable achievements during each decade. We already have our films picked out for the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, but we need help with our 1970s choice. There is a link to our Patreon in the show notes as well as on our social media. It is open to everybody to please vote. Help program the podcast and choose one of the 4 movies available over there. We have Winnie the Pooh, The Rescuers, Robin Hood, and The Aristocats. So those 4 movies are up for our 1970s pick. So help us program the podcast. Do yourself a favor and watch more movies. And remember, physical media is better than streaming. The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson. Recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.